Everybody, welcome to this issue of Staffing Monthly, and I hope your year is off to a banner start and that you are optimistic about things to come. And here with Staffing Monthly, we focus on recruiting, marketing, sales, and leadership in all verticals. But really this month, we are taking a deep dive into healthcare. Based on my network, there's been some concerns about shifts in the healthcare staffing industry and some of the ways that the buyers, the healthcare organizations are viewing partners or trying to engage with them. So I've really been tapping into the experts out there, people like our guest today that's really been to the top of the mountain. And he's actually out there today helping other people achieve that same level of success. So I actually have with me today Aaron Captain Littles. You're going to hear me call him Cap because we're both military guys. So Aaron Littles, he had a meteoric rise with Gale, and then he's launched out on his own. And we're going to talk about that. So, Aaron, first and foremost, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Hey, really for our viewers' experience, and I was taken aback when we first met, and I didn't think that I could possibly do your story with Gale Healthcare any justice. So, just kind of summarize, like, what did that journey look like when you were with Gale and helping them scale?
Sure. So, Gale Healthcare Solutions was a trailblazer in the long-term care per diem nurse staffing space. And before Gale and Gale had competitors like IntelliCare and all these other ones that popped up,
Yeah.
but no one was booking a clinician using technology and automation. It was still old school call, text, fax. They were still faxing needs
Oh my
around
gosh. Oh
and
my gosh.
saying,
I remember
I
getting
need.
orders by fax machine back in the day, man. I remember this.
Right, right. So now fast forward to 2016, 2017, we come on the scene and I'm helping people download iTunes, get set up with an iTunes account, and then being able to download the Gale app to then put their needs in. But once they did it, ding, 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 their shifts were filled in 15 seconds. So by the time my competitors had gotten coffee and checked their email, the shifts were booked for a month. And so that was revolutionary technology, and we scaled it across the country.
Man, so you really were on the ground with the technology side of that and kind of ushering that into healthcare. What were some of the early challenges, to get your customers, your clients to adopt that outside of just getting them to set up an iTunes account and download the app?
That was actually the really hard part, but but because some of the demographic was a little bit older, they just had gotten their first iPhone, and so you literally had to just sit there and screen share through it. But once you could get them to see their shifts were covered and you solved their problem within minutes, they said, "Ding," the light bulb went on. So it was always a beautiful thing. And again, there was patience at the end of this where they needed help, they needed staff, and being able to have a shift confirmation for your whole month of needs under 4 minutes time, it was revolutionary. And so that forced the buy-in of getting them to adopt the technology and even emailing back and forth or faxing back and forth credentials. So the
Yeah.
fact that all the credentials were right there in the platform, I'd say, hey, I'm not going to send you an email. I need you to log in and see the whole credentials. And once they did that, they were calm because state's in the building and all these other inspectors are looking for CPR cards and they have it in their iPhone or their smartphone. It was amazing. And so we got the adoption through credentialing, through ease of use.
How was it rolling that out to the candidate side? Because again, this wasn't just new for the client. Like this was sort of a new way of working through an agency. What was that like, that adoption with the client or the candidates?
It was really a fairly simple adoption for us. We prided ourselves on about three key metrics: speed of onboarding, speed of shift booking, and speed of pay. So once the clinicians saw that they could set their availability and then get instant notifications for their close geography facilities, they were sold. And then once we created our auto pay feature that they were paid literally minutes after their shift was over, they
Really?
they told their friends and it caught like wildfire.
Well, that is the way to motivate people, right? I mean, we all work for the money, and if they're doing this, they like to get paid quick. So something that was interesting that you hit on both sides that is actually a common theme with some of the other interviews this month. You talked about the adoption was kind of easier than you thought on the client side because they liked seeing their shifts filled. And you also talked about that on the candidate side. They like being able to fill these shifts. And that was one of your metrics was kind of time to fill shifts. Do you feel like it was really the cost of vacancy that was driving that adoption as being a kind of a key pain point for the healthcare industry?
Well, what happens too is that the staffing coordinator at the facility side were desperate. They're sending an email blast to 10 different agencies begging for staff, and everyone's scrambling around. So it was really inefficient. If you could go into one portal, and the joke is, do you need more vendors or do you need a vendor with more nurses? So Gale became very, very known. Like that's why we joked about not wanting to be a vendor management system because we wanted to call ourselves a nurse management system. You needed more nurses. You needed more available people in the pool. Think about Uber. Uber does not work in my wife's hometown because it's one stoplight and there's 1,000, 2,000 people. So Uber doesn't work there. You go to Tampa, Florida, I get an Uber to the airport at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept. It's the same dynamics. If you don't have enough workforce built in the technology, it doesn't work. So we focused on onboarding and hiring. We onboarded 80,000 clinicians over 7, 8 years. So when the clients went to the app, they had the confidence knowing that the shifts were going to get filled. Then competitors got the scraps. They got whatever we couldn't fill within 4 or 5 minutes. And that's okay because that's a different model to say maybe it's a hard to fill Saturday evening, late call,
Yeah.
midnight. Someone's going to get paid an extra $50, $100 bonus to go to that shift. But it was the confidence they had in the marketplace. We are all confident in Uber now to deliver us a ride and get to our location 99% of the time. And that's really, really good. And so that's what Gale actually specialized in.
So that makes sense. And just to kind of start to turn the page from Gale and talk about how you're using some of those experiences to help other healthcare staffing agencies, how big did Gale grow while you were with them?
Sure. So at our peak, and we love run rate. So the way we said run rate was what was our billing for that week times 52 weeks, and
Yeah.
so we cracked 400 million. And
Nice.
and the joke was, and it's one of those things when you're going up, you're like, we're never gonna not go up. But there was a pandemic mixed in there, so we were well positioned, well timed, and we were scalable. So those were some of the keys that we took away from it. And we didn't do anything wrong per se. It's just we got really, really big, and that was my first time leading an organization of 1,000 people and several $100 million of revenue. So I got burnt out. I was out of my depth a little bit, and so now looking back, I would do a lot of things different to make sure I maintain my health,
Yeah, right.
uh, while maintaining that crazy growth during the pandemic while we're all locked down. You know.
And that's a big lesson. And so as you've reflected on that, and I appreciate the vulnerability and sharing that. What other lessons did you learn? Like what were things that you might have done differently that maybe you're taking those lessons and being able to help others not make the same mistake or get through the same mistake?
Sure. And so, I hate to say the pandemic was a boom and a bust for healthcare, but it truly was a blip in the radar. And there's a couple different options. Are we going to make as much money as possible and then, reduce back down to normal pre-pandemic levels? And if you know that going in, it's hard going backwards. But now looking at it, saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is a boom. We're going to hire a bunch of recruiters. You guys are all on contract. If this stays, after 2 years, great. But I had to lay off 200 people and I got physically ill. That was
That
that
hurts.
was hard for me.
That
And
hurts.
and it's one of those things where everyone bled Gale Red, I'm not saying the bad part. Like there was a lot of good that came from. We had a foundation. We helped clinicians
Yeah.
with scholarships. We did a lot of good with that revenue. But there was a point where we said, do we slow down and put the scaffolding, swap the scaffolding out for foundation work? And we said, let's keep running and we'll clean it up later. And
Ooh.
that was a choice. That was a
Ooh.
choice. We all looked at each other and said, and we were onboarding 20 recruiters a week. Okay. We were a machine. We were onboarding 1,000 clinicians a month. So it's one of those things where if you can hit that ramp, then you have to kind of have the end game in mind, like Starbucks. So
Yeah.
Starbucks, I met with one of the CEOs when they were at their big ramp, and they were onboarding a location every 26 minutes. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy.
I can't
But
even wrap my head around that.
but that's why they have Starbucks across the street because they were just buying anything that looked like a competitor. We didn't do that. We weren't that aggressive to say let's buy IntelliCare, let's buy Shift Key or whatever.
Right.
Those are some things like if you're going to take over the world, you got to take it all the way over, and that's a strategy that you have to look at in those situations.
Yeah, it's true. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go in this business. And I know that those lessons learned are invaluable. I know that, when I'm working and coaching with agency owners and leaders, it's really the lessons that I learned in the tough times, the challenges, the failures that tend to be the most practical and the most useful. So, but
Absolutely.
that's what you're doing with Streamline. So now in the wake of that journey, kind of the top of the mountain, 400 million run rate, that which is, I mean, that puts you in the top percent of 1% of leaders out there in this industry. So kudos to you on that.
Thank
But
you.
now you're with Streamlined. You've launched this and you said, hey, I've learned all these lessons and I care about helping others, and you're
Right.
doing this. So I want to dig into it. What is your main focus? Are you helping staffing, kind of healthcare staffing agencies become more technology enabled, or are you helping them with the business development scale side? Like where are you fitting in with helping these agencies out?
Sure. I think it goes hand in hand. So I look at myself as a digital transformation person. And that's what Gale was. If you think about it, I use the example between Blockbuster, Netflix, and saying, hey, there's a different business model that's coming. You don't have to do it 100%, but you should at least look at it and evaluate it for your business. And so, as an example, it's just a matter of meeting with different agency owners and saying, is there a swim lane in the healthcare ecosystem that could benefit from an on-demand efficiency platform-based model? And because the healthcare staffing is one of the biggest staffing industries in the US,
Yeah,
and healthcare, people get sick, people get healthy, the needs actually change. So it's like this stock market. So before Gale had the Gale platform, there was a spreadsheet with 1,000 rows, and everyone's like the Wolf of Wall Street on the phones. Hey, I got a CNA 3 to 11. Okay, I got Susie. She's coming. Book her. Like, and it just, but that's how it was with two cell
yeah,
phones, two phones. So where does that exist in other segments of healthcare that the platform model makes sense, or not even just the platform model, Dan? It's where can there be efficiencies through technology to also drive scale and growth? The one of the biggest things that concerns me about the small agencies that I work with is that they stay too small. Is that when the healthcare is down right now because we are post-pandemic and
yeah,
all the SIA data shows that everyone's revenue's down 20, 30, 40%. Okay, it's hard to stomach that when you're only 2 million in revenue. So
yeah,
I'd love for my firms to get to 10 million in revenue and then say, okay, now we have capital to pivot, to look at opportunities. Can we buy and acquire someone? Can we do partnerships? Can we look at other verticals within the ecosystem that we can leverage our talent, our technology, our processes to find other revenue streams? So I help think outside the box. And that doesn't, it's not always cheap and it doesn't always work, but sometimes there's a good idea that we can uncover to say, okay, you have a client that's asking for this, can you do it? And then, as we talk about per diem therapy experts, that's kind
yeah,
of how my consultative approach works. I go ask my clients, what do you guys want? What do you guys need? What's your biggest pain point? And if you can uncover those questions and those problems, then we build solutions that match that situation. And that's really what I love doing is that discovery and innovation to help firms go from, hey, I'm working in my backyard to how do I become a nationwide player with offices or satellite offices all across the country and having a beautiful $50 million business or something like that.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that. What when you're working with these agencies and given your kind of how plugged in you are to the healthcare staffing industry right now, what are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges that healthcare organizations are facing that they need solved and they can be solved by a staffing agency? Like what is that biggest pain point that you think is happening right now?
Sure. I still think there's a pinch on the available pool of clinicians and available talent. And the pandemic burned a lot of people out.
Yeah,
Uh, the demands when you're working on a shift are very, very high. So that leads to burnout.
yeah,
And so the clinician side is still there, but they're tired, they're hurting. And so we have to take care of those clinicians by having them work less. And that's hard to say out loud, but it's like some of those jobs, 24 to 36 hours should be the maximum. That's what it should be.
yeah.
But the nurses are working 48, 60 hours. They need to make
Brutal.
money. It's brutal. Exactly. And so you're losing those nurses quicker. And the facility side is a little bit too rigid, where they're saying, hey, this is our set schedule, 7 to 3. Well, daycare starts at 9,
Yeah,
and how do I drop off the kids with school? And so if we can't find a way to help that clinician that's maybe a single mom with a couple kids trying to move things around and make ends meet, then that's where there comes the pinch on the labor side. So for the clients, they still need flexibility, but they also want reliability. So that's where it goes back to that network effect. How do we get a confident network where we can ensure that there's clinicians available? I have several ideas that I've been working on where it's almost like an internal agency that we create for a system. If they've got a cluster of facilities where the clinicians can bounce around and they're all on that clinic on that facility's payroll, right? Or maybe they're on my payroll and maybe
Right.
they wire me money. But we've got to have those kind of meetings where we're talking through how do we make this work? I had a meeting with a healthcare leader. She manages like 11 facilities, and she said, Aaron, I need your staff, but it's really, really expensive. It's like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. She's like, Aaron, Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement's too low. I was like, how do we fix that? She's like, you got to run for Congress. I was like, well, maybe, but but it's like, how do we innovate now? So I think there has to be more
Yeah.
partnership and collaboration across the table, across our little aisles, so that we can make sure that we provide solutions that the clients can afford, so we have a sustainable model for everyone,
Yeah.
and there's a lot going on with healthcare and the worker classification, 1099, W-2, and that has to get solved. But all those things added up means there's opportunity. There's opportunity to find innovation, but even at the local level, because what might work in Alabama may not work in California and vice versa. So I think it's just being able to own your backyard and then seeing can you scale that same offer to other places across the country.
And going over to the technology side a little bit more in-house, like how are you advising people to build out their tech stack? Because right now, like technology was already sort of running rampant with marketplaces and plugins and kind of piecing things together. And then now you got AI and automation taking over the world. So like how there's a lot and it's hard for people to get their head around it on top of having to recruit and sell and all that. So like how are you guiding people in the technology area?
Sure. I tell everyone take a breath. I say take a breath
Good
and slow
advice.
down because so there's two things, and I joke and say we got to carry water on both shoulders. We have to maintain the core business at all costs. You got to maintain what you have. Then you can dedicate some amount of time to researching, learning, educating yourself on the technologies that are out there. Do the demos, do the one-to-ones, have meetings with people like you and people like me to figure out, what are you seeing that can help me solve a problem? And that's the key is knowing what problem are we trying to solve right this minute through, and then can a technology solution help? Then you do the ROI analysis. And one of the things I messed up a lot when I was at Gale, we switched phone systems 3 times. And we grew to justify two of the switches, but one was a bad deal. And I made a bad decision because I didn't have a couple operators that are doing the day-to-day work test it. And so before we switched the whole company to it, I could have had that person just look at it for 5 minutes and she would have said, Aaron, this doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
So I would say transition slowly, even if you're small, because any interruption to your day to day can throw you off by orders of magnitude of time. And so that's where you can pilot again and slowly roll out and say, okay, I'm going to try this new tool over here in an isolated bubble and make sure it's going to actually do what you think it's going to do. And if people won't do the demos or give you a trial, then don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Focus on growing revenue, and then you'll solve that problem later when you're at 10 or 20 million and you can hire a consultant.
Obviously I'm biased, but mentors and consultants have been a big part of my own journey. You know, there is something to be said about reaching out to people that have knowledge that you might not yet possess, that have been through challenges that you might not yet have gone through, or maybe haven't figured out how to get through, and it's a shortcut, and to basically to gain that knowledge. What one last question I want to have on this side, and I want to switch over to your other project. If you were a leader of a healthcare staffing agency and you were trying to get the attention of the decision maker to have a meeting and have that consultative sales discussion to hopefully lead to bringing in a new logo, how do you approach them? Like what are you saying to get them to pay attention to you to basically go through that pain discovery meeting so you can hopefully sell them?
Sure. It starts with relationship. I think right now it's so loud with the internet, and I'm guilty of adding to the noise, but it's so big. The internet's huge right now, and so I've got to post one time a day on LinkedIn. Otherwise, no one sees my posts. So I actually personally reach out to these people that I'm trying to connect with and talk to them and say, let's have a meeting. Let's have an intro. I want to actually learn about your business. And not to say it's a disarming and ingenuine. I actually do care. My grandfather was in one of these assisted living facilities in Savannah, Georgia, and
Mm,
my grandmother called me, and this is when I'm the CEO at Gale, and she says, Aaron, if I didn't come today, he would not have had lunch. And this man he worked 50 years. He had a pension. We're paying four figures a month for this place.
mm,
And I was like, let's stop what we're doing and find 10 CNAs in Savannah, Georgia. And we did it and we helped that facility. And that's when it got real to me to say, this is what I'm doing. So if you don't believe in what you're staffing, that's the first thing. You better check your pulse. If you don't
yeah,
believe in what you're staffing, that's why I actually care about trying to get clinicians work at a place, and because you need fractional help, you need someone to come right now. And so when anyone gets on the call with me, they usually feel that passion and energy.
yeah,
And so that's where it's like I do actually care. And so I would say reach out as a person, and you're going to meet a lot of people and connect with a lot of people and say, hey, if I can't help you, who can I help? Who in your network is struggling with staffing that I can make an impact for? Because we actually care about what we do. And it's that process of, being Columbo and asking these questions and figuring out, if I can't help you, who else do you know that is actually struggling with staffing that I
yeah.
can help? Because I want to help people. And it's a process. It's not an overnight. You can machine gun call, but I do a little bit more thoughtful calls, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a better approach, especially in the healthcare space, because I think their longer sales cycles are more complicated, kind of buying arrangements typically. Um, Sort of a segue question over to the new project, and I'm curious about this. When you're thinking about an agency like Gale that you built and kind of how you're focused on building a staffing platform, how does the staffing platform fit into a typical staffing partner model? Like when I think about it, like an MSP, they're used to going out to your very traditional staffing agency and working with them. But if do they engage with a staffing platform the same way, or is it something that maybe circumvents an MSP relationship that the hospital uses directly or the healthcare facility uses directly? How does that work when it's actually more platform staffing?
Yeah, so we really emphasize the facilities having the ability to self-manage on the platform. So right now in the old school, and this is like old school, so 2023 and 2024, there's just a lot of emails. So right now to book one person, there's a request. Then
Yeah,
there's I'm working on it because I want to reply. And then did you find anyone yet? Yes, we have Susie. What's her rate? Yes, this is her rate. Okay, can I confirm her? Yes, she's confirmed. That's one person for one shift
yeah,
is 10 emails. So now as I can give my clients a platform, say, go in here, we'll communicate through the portal. You put what your needs are. Susie gets an instant alert. She says, yes, please get me that assignment. The client sees it. They say, oh, we got Susie again. Perfect. Everything's done. Not that I don't want to talk. I'll talk if you want to talk, but let's talk if there's a problem. If there's no problem, let the portal handle some of that back and forth. And it's speed. It's speed and busyness, because these directors that I'm talking to are so busy managing the day to day to then have to spend that much energy managing contingent labor and staffing partners and all this other stuff. So we're actually trying to make it easier for them to say, oh, I just one clicked. This is Amazon. I just one clicked and got a clinician, and she's showing up, and I got GPS tracking, and wow. Oh, and then I get a text alert to just auto pay and approve the hours worked. That was easy. If we can make it easier for them, then you get additional adoption, you get additional buy-in, and ultimately you actually get more business, because now they trust the platform, they trust the process, and they'll give you more hours, they'll give you more work.
and you've got, I'm not questioning you, man, because I do like you. I know we've only recently met within the last couple of months here, but I like you. But so I'm not questioning when I ask this question, but you can legitimately help a traditional old school healthcare staffing agency kind of modernize like that and basically almost convert their old recruiting practices of all the traditional recruiting methods and getting people into their ATSs and all that more into having this digital platform that they can offer to their clients. Like that's what you're doing,
Absolutely. So I signed a major partnership deal with Activate Staff, and they got us a platform built in 21 business days.
man.
And it's table stakes now. It's almost like having a website, Dan. And here's why. Because I use the platform, even if the client doesn't use it, it's my internal scheduling tool. This is how I know who's working where every single day. So unfortunately, well, fortunately, like my employees are my employees. Guys, you
Yeah.
got to use my app so I can know where you are. I can make sure you get paid. I can make sure your documents are valid. You can make sure your documents are valid. So I've got the employee side bought in because they're getting value from being on the platform. So even if I have to slow play and work my clients into using my own portal, I at least got half the equation solved with scheduling. I can still text Susie if I want to, but the
Right.
goal is that we have 500 providers, clinicians, people working that I'm too busy to text you. I just posted that job in the app. Oh, three people showed interest. Now we can have conversations. We can go through and it's a filter on who actually wants to do that work. So absolutely, that's
Okay.
the future right now. It's almost table stakes to have a staffing company. You should have some technology that manages all your candidates, or stay small, be the boutique video exclusive lounge, but you're gonna be blockbuster if you don't look at how do I use some level of technology to automate some portion of the business.
Yeah. No, I see it the same way. I really do. Um, let's transition and talk about the other new project that you're actually working on and building with per diem therapy experts. So what is this? Help me understand what is this thing that you're building? Because it sounds like you're doing a lot.
Sure, and it is, and it's a lot. And I wake up at 5 a.m. to get most more things done. Uh, but per diem therapy experts is just that we want to hyper focus on therapy and then also on the on-demand per diem space. No one's doing this at scale. I've talked to several different people where this is our niche. We're Chipotle, so this is what we do, and this is our swim lane. But what I actually want to build is the MSP solution. So we've talked to some clients now and said, hey, we're talking to you a lot because per diem you still talk a lot.
Yeah.
How do we help you with your other needs? So I'm building a partner network of people who do travel, people who do perm placements, people who do all these other temp to hire, all these other things that I don't really do. And let's get those experts under the umbrella, same portal. So now everyone has access to the portal, everything's in the cloud, and there's access. And now we just have people getting qualified and screened. So it's not a free for all, but I want to partner with partners. I want to partner with agencies that say, I want to be part of that. I'm not making any money in travel nurse staffing, so I'd rather work with Aaron than wait for whatever, the big boys choose to give to me in a
Right.
portal. And I'm competing against 200 or maybe 2,000 other staffing companies. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out ways that everyone can have a good business, help clinicians get jobs, and then of course help patients get care, all under one ecosystem that everyone can take care of their families at night.
So that's interesting to me. So does that make it like, PDT experts is almost like the Amazon where you're having these other partners come in, they're managing like the, I guess Amazon handles the fulfillment, but they're providing the inventory, if you will, and then the platform manages the fulfillment. Is it, would it be who holds the contract with the healthcare organization then? Like, let's say you're
I would
working with, okay,
Yeah, I would still hold the contract. So I'm going to work as the MSP,
gotcha.
and that's where I'm the big relationship. But with healthcare, you can't restrict it so much. And I'm not mad at anyone for getting a good contract to restrict who can do business.
Right.
But some days you need someone on Tuesday at 3 p.m. and some other company has that person.
Yeah.
Let's get a person there, so we can't forget that we actually have patients at the end of our delivery and fulfillment, and that's the model. So it's not exclusive. If the client wants to sign someone else, good on them, but I'm going to do my darndest to make sure that we've got the right partners, the right clinicians, and we can staff them 99%. If they want to go to some other company for 1%, I'll get better, but that's all I can do.
Yeah, and we see some of that out there today. I mean, there is a lot of down costing. I think that as you mentioned, the pandemic was a bit of a boom and a bust, and it hit the healthcare industry too. They had access to money that dried up, and some of the organizations weren't really prepared for the scale back, and
Right.
now they're like taking it out on their staffing vendors and crying poor me, which is tough because the staff vendors don't want to lose a long-term good relationship, so they want to play ball. But at the end of the day, like if you start stripping away all that margin, then you can't provide a good quality service. And then if you can't provide a good quality service, then the health organization can't provide good healthcare service to their patients, which means their patients are going to go elsewhere, and it's just this downward spiral. So it's a challenge, man. So last question I have for you today, and this is really like putting on your COO hat, your CTO hat, kind of like that. you know, just to kind of guiding a healthcare organization into the future. You said this is the future. If you were sitting down in front of an owner or a senior leader of a mid-market staffing agency, right? Not the 2 million, 4 million, but 20, 30, 40 million, somewhere in the mid-market. And you had to give them advice and guidance for what they should be focusing on doing in 2025 for this year. Say, this is where you need to focus your efforts. What is that advice?
Well, first I'd say great job, because when you look at these companies, that you're already in the upper echelon as you start breaking that $20 million mark.
Yeah,
Uh, it goes back to the clients. I would say let's spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks, go travel and visit and sit kneecap to kneecap with every client and ask them, how's it going? What are your pain points? And we have to uncover and discover more of what their need is to then develop a niche for it. And again, we would still maintain the core business, but you look at seeing what can we do over time. Netflix had three business models. They started out with mailing DVDs, and my roommate would religiously go to the mailbox and get a DVD from the mail. And I was like, "What are you doing? Like, you waited 5 days for that. I just went to Blockbuster real quick and got it." But then when streaming happened, oh, I was the stupid one then because
yeah,
he's streaming. I was like, "Wait, how did you even get that?" Now Netflix is doing live streaming sporting events. So
great.
they've shifted, and those are three different things, by the way, right?
Yeah,
Three different models. So we have to look and see where do we stick our toe in the water. Don't just pivot that big a business on a dime. Now you're a cruise ship. So you guys send out a little scout boat, see what's going on in the ecosystem, talk to clients, get feedback, do a pilot, see what you can do low code, no code, minimal code. And then we say, okay, there's something there. Let's put a little bit more energy towards it, but grow your organic, grow your core business. So I would have a bifurcated approach where you maintain and grow your core, but also see where do we innovate? Where do we find that next white space in the ecosystem? And again, Blockbuster was there. They could have done it. They could have gobbled Netflix up and said, "You guys be a division and go do it," and they didn't. And so that encourages me in my little startup right now to say someone's gonna wish they had done a deal with us, 10 years from now.
I love that advice, and it actually is right aligned with one of the other interviews this month with Jeff Shapiro. That was his. He's like going and listening to her. He's like, that's what you need to be doing. He's like, don't be so focused internally that you forget to listen to the actual people that you're there providing a service to. And so you guys are aligned, and I think that's good affirming advice. I will tell you the one liner that I am going to steal from you, and maybe I'll send you royalty checks here and there. Is the you don't need more vendors, you need more nurses. I
Yeah.
think I think that's rock solid advice, and I think anyone that's sitting in front of a decision maker or a buyer of services, if you actually pull that out, they're going to get them nodding their head like, yeah, you're right, that's right. And people just think they need more vendors to get to more nurses, but in reality, there's more than one way to do it. So. Um, Aaron, this is fascinating, man. I really enjoy every time I get a chance to talk to you and just hear more about your journey, and I appreciate you sharing. If anybody wants to reach out to you and learn more about, kind of the technology that you implemented at Gale and what that looks like, or maybe how you're kind of coaching or consulting healthcare staffing agencies, or what this partner model looks like on the staffing platform, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure, sure. So I'm big on LinkedIn, so feel free to DM me. My profile's wide open on by choice. I love connecting with people, and then we can maybe link my email in the show notes or something like
Perfect.
that, just to have for everyone to just shoot me email. I always do discovery calls, no charge, of course. Let's just get to know each other and see if there's something I can help with or not.
Awesome, man. I love that. And I'll get all those things linked right on the page for you. So this is great, man. I appreciate you being here.
All right, thanks so much, Dan.